Okay, picture this. A 12-year-old kid steps off a boat from Scotland, basically penniless, and somehow becomes the richest man on earth. That's Andrew Carnegie.
It's an absolutely wild story. And his choices, well, they didn't just build his fortune, they fundamentally changed American industry. And, philanthropy too.
Totally. So today we're doing a deep dive. We want to break down like 7 key moments in his career, really get inside his head, understand how he made those critical decisions.
And what's fascinating is you can see the foundations being laid really early on, even those first experiences in America.
Right. Let's jump in there. So it's 1848. The Carnegies land in America. They had to leave Scotland because his dad's weaving trade was, well, wiped out by machines.
A familiar story for many immigrants then, forced by economic shifts.
Yeah, and Andrew's first job. A cotton mill, making what, just over $1 a week? Barely anything? But he didn't stick around there for long.
No, and that move, the one to be a messenger boy at the telegraph office, that was smart, really smart. It wasn't just a slightly better job. It was about skills, future skills.
You can already see sharp thinking, can't you? Even that young. He didn't just grab the first thing. He looked for something with potential, room to learn, room to grow.
And his drive to learn was incredible, teaching himself telegraphy just by listening and constantly reading, thanks to Colonel Anderson lending him books. That wasn't typical.
That curiosity, yeah. And it wasn't just about book smarts, was it? He seemed to instinctively get the importance of, connections. People.
Absolutely. Even as a messenger, he was making connections, building relationships. That link with Thomas A. Scott at the Pennsylvania Railroad, that started early and it was crucial.
And look what happened. He moved up fast at the railroad, learned the ins and outs of a massive industry, built this network. It all stemmed from those early, seemingly small choices.
So for you listening, the takeaway there is pretty clear, right? Keep learning, always be acquiring skills, build those connections. And, sometimes you have to start at the bottom to really show what you can do.
And think about the context back then. Loads of people competing for few jobs, his family's trade obsolete. He was up against it.
Yeah, established industries, limited opportunities, but he found a way. Self-education, networking. He made his own luck, in a way.
So for entrepreneurs tuning in, what's the lesson from Chapter 1? Maybe formal education isn't everything. Self-teaching matters.
Definitely. And that hard work, taking initiative, people notice that. Plus, those early connections, you never know where they might lead later on.
It really set the stage, didn't it? That foundation of spotting chances, learning like crazy, and building relationships.
Crucial groundwork. Which leads us to his time at the railroad. Working under Thomas Scott wasn't just a job. It was like a masterclass in management and, importantly, investing. That first dividend check really opened his eyes, huh?
Oh, yeah. That $10 check. He suddenly saw, wait, my money can make more money without me physically working for it.
Exactly. A light bulb moment. It shifted his ambition beyond just earning a salary. He started thinking bigger.
And then at 30, he does something pretty bold. Quits a good, stable job at the railroad to go full-time into business and investing.
It wasn't just a random jump, though. It was calculated.
Yeah.
He knew the railroad industry inside out. So he invested in things the railroads needed. Suppliers, like Keystone Bridge Company.
Leveraging that insider knowledge, which back then was perfectly legal, we should add.
Right. He saw where the money was flowing because he'd been inside the machine. He knew the dependencies. Smart investing based on real expertise.
So the good decisions here. Seeing that investment potential, being willing to leave security behind for a bigger prize, and using his network and knowledge effectively.
And the results. He was wealthy by his early 30s, had his fingers in lots of different pies, business-wise, and he really understood the power of capital.
So, for you, the learner, what's the angle here? Maybe look for investment opportunities close to what you already know.
Yeah, stick to your circle of competence, initially at least. And don't be afraid to really commit if you see a solid business idea. Plus, use that network, use that market knowledge. Ethically, of course.
And the competition was heating up now. Other investors, established companies in iron, bridges, oil even, others with railroad connections too.
He wasn't alone in that space.
So key lessons for entrepreneurs at this point.
Well, number one, income from capital can seriously outperform a salary. Number two, taking calculated risks, really committing, often brings bigger rewards. And three, your industry knowledge and connections. Those are serious assets.
Okay, then comes a big one, the shift to steel. Carnegie saw it coming, didn't he? Steel over iron. For rails, for buildings, the future.
He had foresight. It wasn't just a hunch. He saw the technology changing, specifically Henry Bessemer's process for making steel.
Right. That was the game changer, taking steel production from weeks down to, what, 15 minutes?
Something like that. Just unbelievably faster and cheaper. Carnegie saw that process, understood its potential immediately, and decided to bet big. Really big.
Didn't just dip his toe in. He built state-of-the-art factories like the Edgar Thomson Steel Works near Pittsburgh, fully committed.
Which shows, again, great decision-making, seeing the market trend, embracing the new tech, and focusing his energy and money right there on steel.
And the benefits were huge. He basically revolutionized efficiency, put his company way ahead of the curve in a booming industry, and set things up for massive cost savings down the line.
So for the learner listening, keep your eyes peeled for those big shifts, the technological leaps in your field.
Yeah, be willing to invest in them, right, to get that edge.
Exactly. And focus. Carnegie didn't try to do everything. He focused on steel. Find that core area with growth potential.
Who was he up against then? The Brits, who had a head start in steel.
The British steelmakers,
Right.
also the old iron guys who maybe didn't adapt fast enough, and other American companies trying to get into steel or iron.
So the lesson for entrepreneurs:
Riding those waves of technological change gives you a massive advantage. Focusing your resources really works. And getting in early with a better process, that can lead straight to dominating the market.
Now, let's talk about tough times. The Panic of 1873. Widespread economic disaster. Businesses failing left and right.
And Carnegie, he famously said it was the best time to expand. Talk about going against the grain.
It really shows his long-term view and maybe his strong cash position. While everyone else was panicking, he saw a chance to build his mills cheaper, buy up competitors' assets for pennies on the dollar.
It took nerve and a belief that things would eventually turn around. Classic contrarian thinking.
You see the decision-making clearly. That contrarian view, snapping up distressed assets, tolerating risk when everyone else was scared.
And the payoff was immense. He built his empire at a discount, basically, grabbed market share while others struggled, and was perfectly positioned when the recovery came.
So for you, the learner, maybe the lesson is about having reserves, being financially ready so you can be opportunistic when downturns hit.
Absolutely. Build that war chest. Look for those chances to acquire things cheaply when the market's down. And keep that long-term perspective. Don't panic with the crowd.
The forces back then, struggling companies, nervous banks, just general fear everywhere.
A tough environment.
So what can entrepreneurs learn from Carnegie here?
The crises can be opportunities, if you're ready. That being frugal and controlling costs is vital, especially in hard times. And that you can turn adversity into an advantage.
Okay, let's shift to how he ran the business day to day. His obsession with costs. Watch the costs and the profits will take care of themselves. That was his mantra.
And it wasn't just a saying. It was deeply embedded. Meticulous cost accounting, tracking every penny, constantly pushing for more efficiency.
Even scrapping new machinery if something better came along. That's pretty extreme.
It shows his ruthless commitment to optimization. No sentimentality about equipment, just pure focus on lowering the cost per ton of steel.
And then vertical integration, taking control of the whole supply chain, raw materials, transport, everything. Bringing in Henry Clay Frick to handle coke was a big part of that,
A
right?
huge part. Controlling iron ore, controlling coke, the fuel for the furnaces.
Mhm.
It meant he wasn't hostage to suppliers' prices or availability. It gave him predictable costs and consistent quality.
Which, combined with the efficiency drive, just let him crush the competition on price.
Exactly.
Mm.
Massive cost reductions meant he could consistently undersell rivals.
Okay, so for the learner, implement solid cost tracking. Always be looking for ways to improve processes. And think about controlling your supply chain, maybe not full vertical integration, but strategic partnerships.
Something to secure those key inputs, yeah.
His competitors at this stage, other steel mills trying to compete on price, independent suppliers he was trying to bypass, and the British who were falling behind his efficiency machine.
He was really pulling ahead.
So the entrepreneurial lessons seem clear. Cost control is king. Owning or controlling your supply chain is a massive advantage, and never stop innovating your processes.
Constant improvement, that was key. But that leads us to a more difficult chapter, the partnership with Henry Clay Frick.
Right. Well, Frick was good at what he did, Coke management, but they clashed big time, especially over labor.
Yeah. Carnegie often talked a good game about workers' rights, publicly anyway, but behind the scenes, longer hours, lower wages, he wanted maximum output, minimum cost.
And that led directly to the Homestead Strike in 1892. Brutal, violent. And Carnegie, he was conveniently off in Scotland.
Right. Leaving Frick in charge, but reportedly telegraphing support for Frick's hardline tactics, bringing in the Pinkerton detectives. It was a disaster for his reputation.
So the decision-making here looks less admirable. Delegating the dirty work to Frick, maybe? Prioritizing breaking the union over anything else? A real disconnect between his public image and his private actions.
He achieved the goal, in a sense. The union was broken. He got total control over wages and conditions at Homestead. But the cost, huge damage to his name. The rift with Frick became permanent.
What are the lessons here for the learner? Choose your partners carefully. Make sure you're aligned on core values, like how you treat people.
Definitely. And walk the talk. Your actions need to match your stated values. Plus, you need a clear, ethical strategy for labor relations. Ignoring it can blow up in your face.
Who are the forces here? The Steelworkers Union, obviously, Frick himself as a partner turned adversary, and public opinion, the press, which largely condemned the violence in Carnegie's role.
A real storm.
So, lessons for entrepreneurs. Actions speak louder than words, especially with your employees. Partner conflicts can be incredibly destructive, and neglecting labor issues, that can wreck your reputation.
Absolutely. A tough, complex period.
Okay, fast forward to around 1900, Carnegie Steel is just dominant, an absolute giant, and then he decides to sell.
To J.P. Morgan, Morgan wanted to consolidate the steel industry, create U.S. Steel. And Carnegie was the linchpin.
And the price tag was just staggering. Something like $300 million initially ended up being closer to $480 million with interest, making Carnegie personally worth over $225 million. Unimaginable wealth back then.
It was perfect timing, selling at the absolute peak, a brilliant final business move. And then he pivots, completely dedicates himself to giving it all away, based on his gospel of wealth idea.
Right. That philosophy that the rich had a duty to use their wealth for public good during their lifetime.
And he really followed through. Libraries, thousands of them, funding education, science, peace initiatives. It was a massive second act.
So decision-making in this final phase, a super smart exit strategy, selling high, a real commitment to his own philosophy of philanthropy, and a focused approach to giving education, libraries, things he believed would uplift society.
Benefits. He achieved that goal of immense wealth, but then transformed his legacy through giving. It definitely helped reshape his public image over time.
So for the learner, think about your endgame. Have an exit strategy. Consider the impact you want your wealth to have.
Yeah, and maybe focus your giving, like he did, on areas you're passionate about, where you think you can make a real difference.
The key players now. J.P. Morgan, the buyer.
Yeah.
Other titans like Rockefeller. And all the causes vying for his donations.
A different kind of landscape.
So wrapping up the entrepreneurial lessons from his whole arc.
Well, business success can enable massive societal impact. Having a clear personal philosophy helps guide those huge life choices. And smart philanthropy can build a really powerful, positive legacy.
So Andrew Carnegie, what a story. It's complicated, isn't it? Amazing foresight, incredible ambition, undeniable ruthlessness at times, and then this huge philanthropic shift.
He really embodies that rags to riches American dream narrative, but with a lot of sharp edges and contradictions.
Absolutely. It forces you, the listener, to think, doesn't it? What are the real costs, maybe the hidden costs of that kind of monumental success? And what kind of legacy do our own choices, our own strategies ultimately build? Something to chew on for sure. Okay, picture this. A 12-year-old kid steps off a boat from Scotland, basically penniless, and somehow becomes the richest man on earth. That's Andrew Carnegie.
It's an absolutely wild story. And his choices, well, they didn't just build his fortune. They fundamentally changed American industry and, philanthropy too.
Totally. So today we're doing a deep dive. We want to break down like 7 key moments in his career, really get inside his head, understand how he made those critical decisions.
And what's fascinating is you can see the foundations being laid really early on, even those first experiences in America.
Right. Let's jump in there. So it's 1848. The Carnegies land in America. They had to leave Scotland because his dad's weaving trade was, well, wiped out by machines.
A familiar story for many immigrants then, forced by economic shifts.
Yeah, and Andrew's first job. A cotton mill, making what, just over $1 a week? Barely anything? But he didn't stick around there for long.
No, and that move, the one to be a messenger boy at the telegraph office, that was smart, really smart. It wasn't just a slightly better job. It was about